Um, Welcome to my English YouTube channel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Today, I'm going to look at Unit 5 under Communicative Grammar. And in Unit 5, we are going to look at relative clauses. Relative clauses. Remember, in Unit 4, we were looking at conditional clauses in English. Now today, we are going to look at relative clauses, and this will wrap up our last unit in communicative grammar. So what is relative clauses? A relative clause is a subordinate clause that begins with a question word, e.g., who, which, where, whom, whose, or the word that. So you can use it to modify a noun or a pronoun, i.e., to identify or give more information about it. That is the aspect of modification. So let us look at the following sentences to illustrate what I'm trying to say here. Sentence number 1. Students who can develop independent learning skills often achieve good academic results. So in this sentence, we have the relative clause, which is who can develop independent learning skills. Who can develop independent learning skills. That is a relative clause in this sentence. What else am I saying? Let us take another example. There is a new book that investigates the controversy over political reforms in Hong Kong. There is a new book that investigates the controversy over political reforms in Hong Kong. So in this sentence, that investigates the controversy over political reforms in Hong Kong, that is what we are calling relative clause. It's related to the rest. But it's a subordinate. It cannot stand on its own. Let us take a third example. A university is a place where people pursue advanced knowledge in specific academic disciplines. University is a place where people pursue advanced knowledge in specific academic disciplines. So what is a relative clause in this sentence? The relative clause in this sentence is as follows. Where people pursue advanced knowledge in specific academic disciplines. Where people pursue advanced knowledge in specific academic disciplines. That is a relative clause, and therefore it is a subordinate clause. It cannot stand on its own. It needs to be supported to have a complete meaning. Let us take the fourth example and the last one. The lecture theater in which the inauguration ceremony will be held is now being cleaned. The lecture theater in which the inauguration ceremony will be held is now being cleaned. So in this sentence, the relative clause and therefore the subordinate clause is in which the inauguration ceremony will be held. in which the inauguration ceremony will be held. So, those are just a few examples illustrating what we are all about. So, let us start with number one. We want to look at relative pronouns, which are part of relative clauses. Meaning, under pronouns, we have different types of pronouns. And one of them is relative pronouns. So relative pronouns are very important because they are used to bring about relative clauses. So what are we saying? Words like who, that, whose, and whom are often referred to as relative pronouns when they are used to introduce relative clauses. So we are saying relative pronouns will always introduce relative clauses. How? You use, for example, who is used for people, which for things, and that for both people and things. Let me come again. We use who when we are referring to people. We use which when we are referring to things. But we use that when we are referring to both people and things. But we use whom as the object of a relative clause. That is in more formal English, though it is increasingly common to replace it with who. Like in the American English, they are no longer using whom, but they are very much using who to represent both the subject and the object. While in British English, they still distinguish the two, where they look at who to represent the subject and whom to represent the object. Whose is to indicate possession as a determiner before nouns. Whose indicates possession of something. So let us take some examples. What's the name of the person who or that first landed on the moon? What is the name of the person who first landed on the moon? Or you can say, what is the name of the first person that landed on the moon? Example 2. This is Dr. Eileen, whom we met at a conference in Canada last year. This is Dr. Eileen, whom we met at a conference in Canada last year. Example 3. All students whose registration numbers begin with 374 should immediately go to the library for a tour. All students whose registration numbers begin with 374 should immediately go to the library for a tour. Now, let us now look at types of relative clause. Types of relative clauses. There are two types of relative clause. Number one, defining and non-defining. So there is defining and non-defining relative clauses. So what are we saying? You use a defining, or what we can also call restrictive relative clause, to identify or restrict the reference of a noun. So what do we mean by this? You do not separate it from the rest of the sentence by commas, in text, or pauses, in speech. No, you don't do that. For example, number one, the student who achieves the highest GPA score in this department will be awarded a prize of 20,000 US dollars. Example 2, computer games that involve fighting and shooting apparently have a negative effect on young people. Okay, you use a non-defining or what we call non-restrictive relative clause to supply additional information about a noun whose identity or reference is already established. Let me come back before I go to non-defining relative clauses. In defining relative clauses, we get information, necessary information about the noun or the noun phrase being referred to. But non-defining clause, it supplies additional information which may not be necessary. So, what are we saying? We're saying that you can also use it to comment on the whole situation described in a main clause. For example, Albert Einstein, who put forward the theory of relativity, is considered by many as the most intelligent person in human history. Albert Einstein, who put forward the theory of relativity, is considered by many as the most intelligent person in human history. Example 2. The English department, which provides language support to campus students, is located in the MBA campus. The English department, which provides language support to campus students, is located in the MBA campus. So you should not use the relative pronoun that in a non-defining relative clauses. You should not use the relative pronoun that in a non-defining relative clauses. You can just use it in the defining relative clauses. Number 3, leaving relative pronouns out of relative clauses, meaning you can leave out or you can include relative pronouns. So this is what we want to see. We are saying you can sometimes omit the relative pronoun in a defining relative clause to create a more concise style. You cannot do this in a non-defining clause. It's not possible. So we are saying that you can omit, you can remove relative pronoun and the sentence still will retain the meaning. So this is what we want to critically and keenly look at. Now, listen to this sentence. Half of the training sessions that are arranged for the athletes have been cancelled due to bad weather. So here we have that, which is a relative pronoun. So you can say, instead of saying half of the training sessions that are arranged for the athletes have been cancelled due to bad weather, you can remove that and just say half of the training sessions arranged for the athletes have been cancelled due to bad weather. So we have removed that. and the sentence still retains the meaning. Let me come again. Originally, the sentence is this: half of the training sessions that are arranged for the athletes have been cancelled due to bad weather. So we want to remove that. We want to remove that. And this is only possible in defining relative clauses, meaning what gives essential information about the noun, about the pronoun, or about the noun phrase. So we remove that, and we are now saying that half of the training sessions arranged for the athletes have been cancelled due to bad weather. Let us go to a second example. The designer who or whom you saw at the party last night is Giorgio Armani. The designer who or whom you saw at the party last night is Giorgio Armani. So we can remove who or whom, and the sentence will still retain its original meaning. So we can say, the designer you saw at the party last night is Giorgio Armani. The designer you saw at the party last night is Giorgio Armani. You see, we are not used to who or whom, and the sentence still retains its original meaning. Let us now do comparing defining and non-defining relative clauses. So we want to compare these two, defining clauses and non-defining clauses. And let me remind you, defining relative clause gives essential information about the noun, the pronoun, or the noun phrase. While non-defining relative clause will give additional extra information on the noun or noun phrase or pronoun, additional information that we may not need. So we want to compare here. So the meaning of the sentences changes if you use a non-defining clause rather than a defining clause. So let us compare the following. Non-defining clause. The students who had revised had passed the exam. So all the students revised and they all passed the exam. That's exactly. But when it comes to defining, we say the students who had revised had passed the exam. The students who had revised had passed the exam. Now, this sentence, it is only some of the students revised, and these were the ones who passed the exam. So you can see between the two, there is the all aspect, and in defining, there is specific, whereby it is only those that revised that did what? Had to pass their exam. Had to pass their exam. So sometimes you can combine sentences using appropriate relative clauses. And these are some of what would be of help when we are looking at the whole thing. So what am I saying? This brings us to the end of this unit and the end of this course, Communicative Grammar. So I want to take this time to thank all my viewers, all my learners who have been with me since I introduced this course, Communicative Grammar, from Unit 1 up to Unit 5, which brings us to the end of this course. So what am I actually saying? I'm saying that this has been very important course to us because we need grammar for communication and we need the real grammar, not just playing around with words without obeying the rules, without following the laid down principles that govern, that are the basics of grammar. And therefore, it is my hope, it is my sincere hope that this course has been of help to you, and I hope to talk to you in the future. I'm allowing you to give comments, to give questions about what I have covered, and if there is any area in grammar which you would want me to explore and bring it to learners, I will appreciate, because I may not be able to remember all areas in grammar or in English. But I can do that when I'm reminded by those who are following what I'm doing and they are realizing there are some gaps in terms of what I have covered. I'm willing and I'm always free to go over it again. Otherwise, thank you very much. I'm very happy. Thank you for subscribing to this YouTube channel. Thank you for following me. Thank you for being there to support me in questions, in comments. I appreciate you indeed, and indeed I do appreciate you. And I just say thank you, thank you, thank you very much.